All right, we're going to go ahead and get started if everyone's ready. Um, First off, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Made a little slide for St. Patrick's Day. Hope everyone's wearing their green color today. I know it was a little dreary here in Middle Tennessee. Some storms are coming through, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see anybody, but don't forget to pinch people if they're not wearing their green. So happy St. Patrick's Day, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's first pollution prevention webinar entitled How Pretreatment Programs Can Enhance Your Sustainability Goals. So this webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Green Star Partnership Program in collaboration with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Metro Nashville Water Services, and the Kimmer's Company. My name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Policy and Sustainable Practices here at TDEC, and I will be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful guests. So everyone is muted, as you might already know, upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and I will work on getting those answered. You can also raise your hand with a little hand emoji on the right side of the screen. And then I will unmute the attendees during the question time that have raised their hands to allow for discussion. So let's see. And let's see here. I'm sending a chat right now to everyone to just thank you for attending, and then also show you where the chat box is. Now there's a small little drop down box that says all participants, so you can send that so everyone can see your question, or you can send that straight to me, just the host, or the panelist. Just all depends on who you want to see your question. So we'll make sure that I'm at least in there, either all participants, all panelists, or just myself, the host, so that I can make sure that we get these questions answered for you guys. To give an overview of what is going to be covered today, so many municipalities are required to have pretreatment coordination programs in order to regulate certain industrial process waters. And these programs are in place to protect public wastewater facilities, but can also enhance a facility's sustainability goals through more focused tracking and treatment of certain pollutants. Our webinar speakers today will provide an overview of pretreatment programs from the state, municipal, and industrial sector perspectives, as well as discuss best practices and other considerations. Our presenters have a wealth of knowledge and experience that will help us better understand how pretreatment programs can enhance your sustainability goals. So I'm getting a few messages that are saying that that they're not able to hear audio. I don't know if that's the case with everyone. If you're having trouble with your audio, then you can go up to the little audio at the top left and figure out if you want to do a phone call or through your computer audio. Okay, I'm getting some people that say audio is fine. I will be sending out some messages to the people that asked me that when we get into our presentations. So our first speaker today is Laurel Ronstadt. Sorry, Laurel, if I butcher your last name. I even wrote it down. Laurel is the State Pretreatment Coordinator for Tennessee. She has been with TDEC's Division of Water Resources for 5.5 years. Before joining TDEC, she worked at an environmental testing laboratory, and she has her bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Tennessee Tech University. So Laurel, I'm passing the presenting capabilities over to you.
Hey, thanks, Caleb.
Okay.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. So I'm just going to do a really quick overview of TDEC's role in pretreatment. It should be under 5 minutes because I'm really excited to hear Andy and Kim's presentations. So the National Pretreatment Program is a component of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES program for short. So in Tennessee, TDEC approves the local municipalities to control discharges from non-domestic sources, such as industrial sources. And then those approved local programs then regulate the industrial users through permitting, inspections, sampling, and enforcement. So TDEC's role here is really to oversee that implementation and enforcement of those local pretreatment programs. So the objectives of the pretreatment program are to prevent the introduction of pollutants into publicly owned treatment works, or POTWs, that can interfere, pass through, or otherwise be incompatible with the treatment works. And then we also want to be able to improve opportunities to recycle and reclaim wastewaters and sludges and protect the infrastructure and workers at that publicly owned treatment works. So I like to show this picture to anybody when I'm introducing them to pretreatment because it does a good job of kind of showing where things can go wrong. You've got the industries up in the left, the collection system going into the wastewater treatment plant, and the receiving stream down in the bottom right. So you can have issues in the collection system, due to corrosion. You could have explosions. At the plant itself or in the collection system, you can have injury to workers from hazardous fumes. We're also concerned with interference with the biological activity at that wastewater treatment facility. We don't want pollutants passing through into our surface waters in the state. And we don't want limitations on sludge disposal or more expensive options because of pollutants. So here's the hierarchy, in Tennessee at least. The industries report to the municipalities or utilities with approved pretreatment programs. These are also known as the control authorities. The control authorities then report to TDEC, and TDEC is the approval authority in this case. And then at TDEC, we report directly to EPA. So in Tennessee, we have 101 active pretreatment programs ranging all the way from Memphis to Bristol, and around 700 permitted significant industrial users discharging to those pretreatment programs. Out of those roughly 700 users, about half of them, or close to half of them, are subject to federal categorical pretreatment standards. So one of the big things TDEC does as the approval authority is inspections. We'll do pretreatment audits, pretreatment compliance inspections, and technical assistance visits. So these generally consist of kind of lengthy interview/questionnaire portions where we ask the pretreatment coordinator a lot of questions about the program. We also do a file review, so we're going to look at the industrial user permits, reports, any enforcement actions, correspondence, the inspection forms. And then we also do oversight inspections at a portion of the industries that are permitted by the local control authorities. So it's really important to point out that these audits and inspections that TDEC does are of the control authorities. We are not directly auditing or inspecting the industries themselves. So this is just an overview of our inspection cycle. We do audits once every 5 years. Those are generally led by somebody out of the Nashville Central Office. And then pretreatment compliance inspections and technical assistance visits are done twice every 5 years, kind of back and forth, PCI, TAV, PCI, TAV. And those are usually led by somebody out of a TDEC field office. So apart from the inspections, TDEC staff also does a lot of review of submittals and program modifications from the approved programs. So some examples of those reviews that we do are the local limits calculations to determine the limits that are given to the industries, legal authorities such as sewer use ordinances, and industrial waste surveys. We also review pretreatment semi-annual reports and annual reports from the control authorities, and we provide a lot of technical assistance and training to the regulated community. We do initiate enforcement action as needed, and then of course we report to EPA. So that is all I have for my very quick overview of TDEC's role. So I'm actually moving to the private sector, and my last day with TDEC is this Friday. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Adam or Samantha. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andy. Actually, it might go back to Caleb to introduce Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laurel, for all you do and for giving us sort of that overview. And, you know, we're sad to see you go here at TDEC, but we know you'll go on to do great things. So it's funny, this is we caught you on your last day, so the perfect timing for the webinar. So thanks for all you do, and thanks for giving us the run through there. So next, I would like to welcome Andy Welch. He works for Metro Water Services, the primary water and sewer utility for Nashville, Tennessee. He has been involved in the pretreatment program at Metro for over 26 years. He has been the pretreatment manager since 2018. He has a BS from Middle Tennessee State University with a major in biology and a minor in chemistry. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Andy, and you should be able to move your slides.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Obviously, you can't answer, but I thought I should say that anyway. What I'm going to try to do today is we're going to do a brief history of the National Pretreatment Program. That will be very brief because my wife told me it was quite boring. Then we're going to move into what we as a pretreatment program are trying to accomplish in our jobs and in our roles. And then we're going to talk more about what we expect of you, the industrial user, and what you, the industrial user, can do to make sure you are in compliance with the program. So in 1972, the Clean Water Act established the NPDES system. As Laurel mentioned, this is the system that permits wastewater treatment plants, among other things, limits what pollutants we may discharge to the waters of the U.S. In order to, I guess, protect these plants from potential industrial pollutants, in 1973, 40 CFR 128, that's 40 Code of Federal Regulations 128, set up the initial pretreatment standards. In 1978, they were replaced by 40 CFR 403, which are pretty much the pretreatment standards we have today, with a number of modifications over the years. In 2005, there was the pretreatment streamlining, which attempted to relieve the burden on both us and you, the industrial user, us, the control authority, and still have an effective program. So what are we trying to accomplish in a pretreatment program? Prevention of pass-through, prevention of interference, protection of quality of municipal sludge, and protection of workers. Pass-through, you keep hearing that, and you will keep hearing that. Basically, any pollutant that comes from an industrial or other source enters the treatment plant and passes through it and causes a violation, that is a pass-through. Interference, any pollutant that enters the treatment plant and disrupts its biological process in some way and causes a violation at the effluent, that is interference. Municipal sludge quality, obviously we want to be able to reuse the sludge for land application, or in a worst case scenario, maybe landfill it. So we do want to make sure that whenever that is disposed of or land applied, that it does not contaminate the groundwater. And worker safety, if you are working downstream of an industrial facility, you don't want to have to worry about fumes that might be harmful to you. So there are 4 types of pretreatment standards: general prohibitions, specific prohibitions, categorical standards, and local limits. General prohibitions, there we go again with pass-through and interference. User may not cause those. Specific prohibitions, if you've been paying attention so far and with a little bit of common sense, most of these should not surprise you. Fire, explosive, corrosive, things that stop up the sewer, etc. I'll point out number 7, presence of toxic gas. That one is there specifically for worker safety. So categorical standards are standards that have been established by the federal government for particular industrial categories and particular processes of those categories. Each has specific pollutants that are limited. The idea being that if you apply what is reasonable to accomplish for a particular type of industry, and also sort of create a level playing field by having consistent requirements nationwide for what pollutant levels they are required to meet. Here's some examples of different categorical standards: electroplating, plastics molding and forming, etc. And local limits, these are established by the control authority. What we do is we get background information via sampling of non-industrial sources, domestic or commercial, to find out what pollutants are coming into our POTW, our treatment plant. We also see what the levels of pollutants are at the treatment plant, both of the influent and the effluent, so we can see how much of the pollutant we are removing. We include a safety factor. We consider a safety factor as far as being having some room for error there. We consider worker safety, and we come up with a number for each industry to meet that will allow us to meet our limits. So who do we regulate? We regulate all SIUs, significant industrial users. If you discharge over 25,000 gallons per day of processed wastewater, you are an significant industrial user. Also, if you contribute up to, or 5% or more rather, of the hydraulic or organic loading to a treatment plant, the catch-all, anything that the control authority has a reason to believe might cause pass-through or interference, and I think I missed out at the beginning, we include all categorical industrial users, that standard that we just previously referenced as SIUs. So what do we have to do to get our job done? We do annual inspections. We maintain a compliance monitoring database of sampling that both we do and you are required to do. We issue notices of violations when necessary. We enforce based on our enforcement response plan. And we develop those local limits we were just talking about. So what's our primary tool in doing that? That is the industrial wastewater discharge permit. Depending on your control authority, you'll generally get to fill out a new application every 3 to 5 years. In Nashville, it's 3. I don't think it can be any less than every 5 years. This permit is going to identify who you are, provide you with the local limits, and if categorical limits apply to you, it will provide those as well. And you are expected to meet whichever of the two numbers is more stringent. We'll also give you the limits that we're supposed to meet at our plant, give you your sampling requirements, and once again provide those general and specific prohibitions. Tell you a little bit more about what violations and penalties you might be subject to. And from here on out, we're going to be mostly going over what we have, or going more into detail about what we've covered on these last 2 slides. Inspections. So, one thing about our annual inspection that you should understand, it is not primarily a compliance inspection. That could happen if you're having problems. But when we're showing up for our once-a-year visit, that is not our intent. We're trying to, and I am skipping ahead, so I'm going to back up now. Again. Okay. So we're trying to get to know you and get familiar with your process, check the accuracy of your application, and just make sure that we have a working relationship with you, that we know who to talk to, you know who to ask questions of, and you know what to expect from us. And I should mention that Laurel mentions that they do inspections too. So sometimes they will be accompanying us on our inspection. And as she said, they are not looking at you. They are looking at us at that point. So if you get along well with your inspector and you want to watch them squirm a little bit, whenever we show up and we have someone with the state with us, you can say things like, now who are you again? And what is it you do? I've never seen you before in my life. And at this point, we'll be really concerned about what the state might say. So if you want to continue getting along with us, let Laurel and her colleagues in on the joke at that point. We'll also be looking at things like waste streams. We want to know what waste streams you have, how you dispose of them, and see the records. We want to see your sampling point and make sure that you are sampling in a manner and location that you are required to do. Sampling and monitored, sampling and analysis must be conducted as per EPA methods. And here is what we need to get, or what you need to collect whenever you are collecting a sample, and what you need to provide to us as well whenever you report that. Mention briefly the signed certification statement, and Kim's going to talk about that more as well. But one part of that is basically you are stating that the sample, that the analysis that you are providing to us is representative of our process. Excuse me, of your process. Which means in order to accomplish that, sample dates should be chosen at random on a day of normal operation. We had one facility, we noticed that their numbers were always much lower than the numbers that we got. And we asked them about that, and they straight up said, well, we noticed that all the numbers you get are bad, so we don't sample on the days. So that is not a representative sample. Also, do not choose a sampling date based on what processes are occurring. If you are, Coca-Cola, don't schedule all sampling on days that you are producing Diet Coke. Spread it around, right, etc. Don't consistently sample on the same date each month or the same day each week. Had another similar conversation with the industrial facility. Their numbers weren't necessarily good or bad, but they always had the same numbers, and our numbers were pretty highly varied. They were sampling on the 10th of each month. So we got them to fix that, and we were getting good data. And be particularly aware, you don't get into the criminal area too much with us. One exception is falsification. So make sure that when you are certifying that's the result, that is an accurate statement. So types of violations. Chronic violation. More than 2/3 of your samples in a 6-month period are in violation. Technical review criteria violation. Anything that is by a particular factor over the limit on 33% of the samples, that meets the technical review criteria for a violation. And I'm sorry, these are all significant non-compliant violations. And that also includes any other violation or of a pre-treatment effluent that may cause interference or a pass-through, once again. Any discharge that causes imminent danger. If you fail to meet a compliance schedule milestone by 90 days, we're going to talk about compliance schedules a little bit more later. If you are more than 30 days late on any reporting to us that's required, a little note on that, the pretreatment streamlining that I mentioned earlier, That allows municipalities to go to 45 days late. Some have done that, Nashville has not. So refer to your permit for that. Failing to accurately report noncompliance and any other violation that we deem to be significant noncompliance. Non-significant violations are basically small ones. These slightly out once in a great while, you're a few days late on a report, you have a spill but it doesn't cause a problem, these sorts of things. So what happens whenever a violation occurs? We will send you a notice of violation. And this is typical language. This is our specific language. I expect most people have similar language when we send an NOV. So basically, respond back within 10 days. Fix the problem within 45 days. If you're unable to accomplish fixing the problem within 45 days, give us a schedule of when you will fix the problem and why it's taking you whatever period of time it will take you. And that is a type of compliance schedule. Enforcement and penalties. Those are determined by our enforcement response plan. That is something that we make according to EPA regulations, and then the approval authority approves it. So most non-compliance, non-significant, will result in cases with significant compliance. You may get an administrative order, which is a compliance schedule. If it is an agreed order, that means you proposed it and we agreed to it. Along with that, sometimes there might be monetary penalties involved. Hypothetically speaking, the regulations say up to $10,000 per day per violation. The overwhelming majority of monetary penalties are not near that level, and what they are intending to accomplish is to remove any economic benefit gained by your noncompliance. Depending on your sewer use ordinance, some control authorities may be able to assess costs based on damages to the sewer or the plant, etc. So, as we said in the permit section, you all are required to self-sample. What do you need to know about that? You need to know that all reports have two deadlines. Whatever the deadline is in your permit, say July 30th, and within 30 days of the sample that within 30 days of the date that you collect the sample. The reason for that is that we have reports that we must submit to the state, and those must include all sampling from a given time frame. For example, we have a report in April. Due in April. If you sample in March for that July sampling and submit it to us in June, you're ahead, we're behind. So the state is upset with us, and consequently, we're upset with you. So go ahead. If you do sampling early, we advocate that actually, but do go ahead and get that information. You're welcome to sample as much as you want, as long as you do the minimum required by your permit. But you can't take 3 samples and submit the best one. Anything that you collect as per EPA methods must be submitted to us. Also, if any sample that you take is in violation, you must notify us within 24 hours, and then resample in 30 days. The only exception being that you we happen to show up and sample in that 30-day period and prove ahead of time that you are already back in compliance. And just another comment about that, whenever you are in violation, you are only required to resample for the particular parameter that was in violation. You don't have to sample for everything that you're typically required to sample for. Record keeping. As I mentioned, we do review documents whenever we do our inspection, and these are the things that we're looking for. These things must be kept on file. In our case, it's every 4 years. I think I saw on some of Kim's slides that one of Kim's slides that for Memphis it may be 3 years. So check your permit for that. But you are required to keep records. Keep your application as well as the permit that we send you, correspondence to and from us, any sampling that's done, any waste manifest. Pretty much, if it's related to your pretreatment program, it's a good idea to keep it, and to leave it back to the inspections, it is a good idea to have it available and easily accessible whenever we do that inspection. So, brief reference information here. This information is all readily available on the web, so do a search if you're interested in more. I should warn you that the presentation, the webinar, and the manual itself, those are all aimed at the control authority. In other words, they are telling us what we need to do to accomplish our job, so I'm not entirely sure how helpful they will be to you all, but could be useful. And that is all I have today. And I'll turn it back over to Caleb.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you so much for going through that and sort of lighten the way with how you guys do things. I think that a lot of times will, you know, of course, make things clear. And I think that a lot of the pre-treatment type stuff could be a little bit fishy if you don't, you know, you don't know a lot of that stuff. So I appreciate you making that clear. We have a few questions if you're ready. Let's see. I got this one pretty early on. It says, is it an overflow through a manhole in a local street, any city, an interference? So I guess maybe an overflow through a manhole in a local street, and this is in any city. So I don't know if Laurel, you know a little bit more about this as well. Is that an interference? Is the question.
I'm deferring to Laurel on that one. Since it sounds like she may not be there.
She's still here. She just might be muted.
I will say that, and I would say it. The interferences of the POTW, which is the whole treatment works. So I would say that yes, it is.
Okay. And then let's see. I got some more questions. Let's see, they're coming in. It says, do they have color and or turbidity standards through the local program?
As far as for industrial facilities, no, I believe we do have some of those as far as what our effluent should look like.
Okay, and then one last question for you, Andy, before we move over to Kim. It says, does Metro Water offer technical assistance to industries to assist with pre-treatment programs? And then if not, who is the best source for industry looking for technical assistance with their pre-treatment programs?
We offer technical assistance in the sense that we will aid you in meeting your requirements as far as your actual treatment system goes. Our ability to go into a whole lot of detail on that is limited. We can certainly provide you some general guidance. I would think that in general the private sector would probably be the best to get more detailed assistance on that, and I expect that would be the answer that most control authorities would give.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for that knowledge and for your presentation, Andy. And I'll be looking for, if anybody has any more questions for Andy, send those my way, and we'll do a little questionnaire section at the end of the presentation. So next, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Kim, but I think we are going to be able to do it. Let's see. Kim, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So I would like to introduce Kim Sass. She is the environmental leader for the Kimores Company, SC LLC, the Memphis, Tennessee manufacturing facility. She is an experienced environmental leader, skilled in environmental compliance and process safety management. She manages the day-to-day environmental compliance activities for the facility, which includes inspections, record keeping, reporting, and interactions with various regulatory agencies. In addition, she is the alternate security officer for this facility, so she has a lot on her plate. Prior to joining Kimroy's in June 2018, she spent 23 years as an environmental consultant. Ms. Sass holds a BS in Chemical Engineering from North Carolina State University. So I will go through your slides for you, Kim, and you can, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caleb, and I apologize for the technical difficulty. I think it's the reason is the sky is literally falling in Memphis. There's a lot of bad weather coming through right now, and we sit inside a concrete building, so sometimes our internet doesn't always work the best. But if you can go to the second slide about where it starts with the city of Memphis. And I can't even see what you're doing, so let me know when you're there.
And we're here.
Okay. All right. So before I get into talking about compliance, and some of my compliance slides will follow in with what Andy was talking about, since this is for people all over, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on just what the Memphis system for our industrial monitoring and pretreatment program looks like. So they are the control authority for Memphis. Some history that I found very interesting that the city actually provided in a newsletter earlier this year is that the first segments of our collection system were constructed in the late 1800s, and that was to separate sanitary sewer from the storm sewer to help reduce the yellow fever epidemic. And at that point in time, there was about 50 miles of sewer lines. Well, as of January 2021, when this information was sent out by the IMPP, there's over 2,800 miles of sewer lines in the Memphis area. We do have two separate treatment plants, the MC Stiles North Treatment Plant, which started operation in the 1977, and then the Maxon plant, which is the South plant, started operation in 1975. The current staff is about 9 employees. They have over 102 permitted industrial users in the city, and we are the largest pretreatment program in Tennessee and EPA Region 4. A couple things that are going on with the system being as old as it is. The city is in the middle of a 10-year project and will spend about $250 million to assess and rehabilitate our collection system. So we're going through some improvements and some upgrades throughout the city. So if you want to go to the next slide.
All right.
Okay. So, you know, I thought about this in general terms, not just specific to Chemours permits. Used ours as an example, but thought about it from the other sites I had in my consulting world. You know, sampling we may have to do, industries may have to do daily, semi-annual sampling. There may be continuous sampling, right, for pH and flow. And some points to consider for this sampling, and I think Andy hit on some of these before. You know, if you have monthly average limits, you know, you want to make sure that you're sampling early in the month in case you have any non-compliance issues. You want to make sure that your monthly average is in compliance. You don't want to wait till the last day of the month to get that and know that you're out. Make sure that you're using the proper technique for sampling. Know which parameters require grab samples, such as oil and grease, versus composite sampling. That's a key thing to look at. You know, regarding reporting, here in Memphis, we have monthly self-monitoring reports, semi-annual self-monitoring reports, and annual flow meter certifications. Make sure your reports are submitted on time, right? That's the one area where you will be talking to the regulatory agency, the control authority, but maybe not on the best terms if you're late submitting your reports. Different areas do it differently. Here in Memphis right now, our monthly reports are due on the 15th of the month for the previous month. And our current reporting structure is hard copy reports being sent in, but the city is rolling out an online system, Linkos, for submitting reports. However, right now we still have to send the signed, certified, wet copy, wet signature to the agency. So we do both right now. We submit in through Linkos. It prints out a nice little report. We sign it and submit it, so we've done both. Something for, I'm not sure how other locations do it, but for the semi-annual monitoring reports, those have due dates of June 1st and December 1st. So it's not your typical semi-annual reporting period and your semi-annual due dates. So this can oftentimes cause confusion and potential non-compliance if you get your dates off from that. So read your permit carefully and understand what your semi-annual reporting period is and when those due dates are. Your annual flow meter certification and calibration, those are due here annually by June 30th of each year, so just make sure you're getting your flow meters calibrated, and of course that's a key for compliance. Regarding instrumentation and calibration and maintenance, calibrate often, especially things like your pH meters, right? It doesn't take long or many things to trigger some offsets with your pH meter. So make sure you are calibrating those frequently. Calibrate your flow meters at least annually. And with that, don't just calibrate them, but make sure you have the logs being filled out by your E&I mechanics or whomever may be doing your calibration. Make sure they're being filled out with all the information required, and it should be listed specifically in your permit, the date, the time, for pH, what buffers were used, things like that. Make sure that those are recorded and kept for your compliance for when inspections do show up. And with that, one of the other things is, before I go on, is if you have questions on your permit, talk to your control agency authority, talk to your regulator. They like to talk to you. They really do. They like to answer questions, or at least mine does. And you build a relationship, and building a relationship with the regulator is key, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a few slides. So Caleb, if you want to go to the next slide, please.
All right.
So just some additional requirements that we have, and I think most locations do. You have to develop and implement an accidental and slug discharge plan. So you got to provide protection from accidental discharges to the city sewer. You must prepare them and implement them. And you need to look at things like your raw materials. How are they stored? Where are they stored? How do you prevent accidental discharges from happening? If you have one, what procedures do you do to prevent it from getting in the sewer, or what do you have to do to notify the city? And with this, what I want to say is use your other environmental compliance plans that you may have already developed, your SPCC plan or your stormwater plans, operating procedures. Those should all take into consideration accidental leaks and spills and discharges to the sewers. So use those to develop and implement this discharge plan. If you do have a slug or an accidental discharge, immediately notify your control authority. For us, we also then have to do a written notice within 5 days. So make sure that that's all documented and kept on site. A couple other things on additional reporting or approvals. If you're going to do any changes at your facility, including plans to discharge additional processed wastewater, so your volume, your flow is going to go up. You're going to put new pollutants into the wastewater that you previously weren't permitted for. Or if you're going to change the concentrations of your pollutants that you currently do such that the authority is not acclimated for it, you need to, submit notifications, submit permit applications, talk to your agency about this, let them know what's going on, let them know the time frame, what you may want to do and what they can handle, maybe two different things. And for us in the city, we have to do a flow determination letter when we do our applications to make sure that the flow that we would like to discharge can be handled by all the receptors and the final receptor at the treatment plant. So those are things that you want to take into consideration, do your notifications, discussions with your regulatory agency early in the process. Next slide, please, Caleb.
All right, we're there.
Okay, so this one does definitely follow in with what Andy was talking about regarding notifications of violations. If you know that you have an exceedance, we notify both the main office and the control room of the treatment plant within 24 hours of becoming aware of the violation. So we call the control room to let them know, maybe we had a high concentration of pollutant X, and, depending on when you get your sampling results back, it may have been a few days ago, but they can look to see if there were any upsets at the system at that time. Also, if it's a slug and you notify immediately, they can prepare in advance for what's coming so that they can properly treat it. We need to do written follow-up within 5 days from our initial notification of when we became aware of the violation. And then, as Andy said, once you receive a written violation from the control authority, you're going to have additional follow-up action items to submit back. For us, and I have a letter pulled up here, we have 30 days to submit a report that talks about what happened to cause the violation, what steps we're taking to ensure that we're going back into compliance. We must do sampling to show that we did return to compliance, and if we can't achieve compliance, then we have to call and talk to the control authority and come up with compliance plans, things like that. If you can't return to compliance and it's going to be an ongoing thing and you need to modify your system or add additional pretreatment, you need to discuss that with the agency, discuss timing, submit revised applications. You may go into a more formal compliance plan for that specific project. Next slide.
All right.
So the one that should be up is just some other things that I think are key. We have to submit reports for the billing purposes to the city sewer fee. So make sure you're submitting those reports if you have to. Ours goes to a different place than our monthly self-monitoring reports go to. So make sure you're submitting those. When you submit the hard copies, I always feel it's best practice to submit, via FedEx or mail certified so you can prove when it was sent and when it was received. We talked about sampling being daily, semi-annual, annual, continuous. There may be additionals, and it all depends on if you are subject to categorical standards or not, and what the local requirements are for your area and the type of industry that you have. We do our permit renewals every 5 years. Andy said theirs is maybe a different time, so, you know, maybe 3, maybe 5, it varies. Our permits can contain language for doing either a 90-day or 180-day baseline monitoring report for whether you're categorical or non-categorical industry. Our record retention policy for the permit is 3 years, and one of the things that is key when you submit these reports, and as most of you know, for any regulatory reports, the signatory and certification requirements, right? There is specific language in our permit that must be in our statements and in our reports. You must have a responsible corporate official or a duly authorized representative who can sign it, but that authorization must be in writing, and you need to keep it on file in case it's ever asked for. So the plant manager, you know, if it's a corporate official, it may be the vice president who has authority. Well, they may delegate authority to the plant manager and to, say, the environmental manager or environmental health and safety manager. Make sure those delegations are in writing and readily available. Next slide, please, Caleb.
Okie dokie.
Okay. So, you know, when Vaughn asked me to do this presentation, we talked about sustainability and different projects and maybe what we've worked on. You know, here at the Memphis site, we've completed one water conservation project where we added some controls and we're reducing the amount of water being used. And for us, there was a positive impact on our discharge to the city because we're not then discharging as much as we were. And since we pay fees on how much we discharge, that was a cost savings to us. But it wasn't such a high volume where we felt that our permit was going to be impacted because we have concentration versus mass. But what I want to focus on is whenever you do sustainability projects or expansions or just anything, you need to notify and contact the control authority in the early stages of the project and then keep them updated on the status of the project. You build that, the communication is a key foundation in building the relationship with the regulatory agency, and that's really critical to get these projects going and just have a good working relationship with them. You know, the project, your project may not only impact you, but it could impact the treatment plant or other industries, whether we have like new pollutants or increased concentrations, or you may have a flow reduction. So you may need to take more of the pie from the BOD, but that pie is not available. And you need to know that in the early stages to know if your project can go or not. Timing is a key. The authority needs time to review the project, propose changes, determine impacts to them, and impacts to, again, the industries. And you don't want to get so far in your project where you spent millions of dollars or even hundreds of, thousands of dollars, whichever, and find out, well, they can't take our water because of X, Y, and Z. So I just highly recommend the communication part. I think that's just a key in our world to keep everybody informed and updated, and it should help the project go as smoothly as it can, right, on that side of it. The implications of sustainability may impact your current permits. You may have new requirements. You need to make sure you continue to comply with those. And you need to be able to partner with other agencies if you need to, such as like the Green Star program, to help implement these projects. They can provide coordination and communications if need be. And that's the end of my presentation.
Kim, thank you so much. I really love the side of the pretreatment that the topic of pretreatment that you brought to the table. I think that there's a lot of industry here that can learn from, you know, sort of like a case study of you know, what you went through and what how to make things easier. So I really do appreciate that. Going back to the question that we had for Laurel, she said that, it's on the chat box, she said that she was having some issues unmuting, but she said that she would agree with Andy on the interference question. Our state rules define interference as a discharge which alone or in conjunction with a discharge or discharges from other sources inhibit or disrupts the WWF wastewater facility, its treatment processes or operations, or its sludge processes, use or disposal, or exceeds the design capacity of the treatment works or the collection system. I know that was long, but you can look in the chat box and that'll sort of give you an idea of the answer to that question. So if anybody has any more questions, please send those in the chat box. I'm not seeing any currently, but I'm not seeing any currently, but if you have those, send those to me. My email is Caleb, C-A-L-E-B, .powell, P-O-W-E-L-L, @tn.gov. Yeah, if you have any questions that, you know, you think of later on that you might want to ask these our wonderful speakers, please send those to me and I'll get those answered for you and or connect you to the right speaker and maybe get your answers answered, I guess. So if there's no more questions right now, then first off, I just want to go ahead and thank our speakers again. You guys bring a lot of knowledge and experience, and I really appreciate that. I think that's really what we need for the pretreatment and sustainability goals and in the industrial sector. Also, I want to take time to thank all of our audience. We couldn't do these webinars if we didn't have an audience, so thanks for taking time to learn more about this, and hopefully you can bring this to your facility and you know, help out your sustainability goals while also helping out the pretreatment facilities or the facilities that treat your water. This is the first of 4 pollution prevention webinars that the Green Star Partnership and the Pollution Prevention Program will be doing this year. I'm actually about to send in the chat the topic and the, let's see. Yeah, so our next webinar is actually going to be April 21st next month, and it is going to be the topic is a safer and more sustainable option for your facility's water treatment. So we talked about the pretreatment and stuff like that, and this is going to go a little bit more in depth, but it's also going to give some newer technologies that are out there that can help you with your water. The link is in there if you want to go ahead and register. Would really appreciate that. Also would like to say that this webinar is being recorded, so I will convert this over and upload it to YouTube, and then I'll make sure that I send the link out during our follow-up. If our speakers are okay with it, then I will also be sending out a PDF of the presentation so that you can have that information. I'm going to check with them and make sure that they're okay with that. And yeah, if you have any more questions, please contact me. Like I said, caleb.powell@tn.gov. And like I said, a follow-up email should be sent out by the end of the week with all of this information in it. So happy St. Patrick's Day, and everyone have a great day, great rest of the week, and good luck through the storms tonight.